Welcome back to another episode of NACOA's Lunchtime Lives, a series of live interviews where I speak to people that have advocated for NACOA and COAs alike. And in this incredible episode, I speak to Colleen Perry, who is from over in the USA. It was quite nice to be able to do this interview during COA week of 2021, a week where we brought together leaders from all across the world that advocate for COAs, and Colleen is definitely one of these people. We talk about Colleen's experiences of life growing up with an alcoholic parent, what that was like for her and the impacts that it has on her adult life. We looked at the advocacy work she's done and some of the amazing things she's been able to achieve with that work in really advocating for children affected by their parents drinking and their cause. This is an emotional one, and I really hope that you get a lot from this interview. I know I certainly did. And if this is the first time that you've ever been here, please do make sure that you have subscribed, you've turned on those notifications so you know each and every time that we post a video, and I really hope you enjoy this one. Colleen, there you are.
Hi, how's it going?
I'm all right. How are you?
Doing all right.
I believe, is this your first ever live?
I think it's my second or third.
Okay. Well, I thought we was gonna steal the show of being the special one. Before we get started, why don't I just hand over to you and give you an opportunity to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are.
Okay, so my name is Colleen Perry, and I am an advocate for children of alcoholics. I use my Instagram page, CA Perry, to tell my story as the daughter of an alcoholic, and just to create a community for children of alcoholics, because there doesn't tend to be that type of community, especially here in the United States for that. So it's my it's my mission to get my story out there to help as many people as possible, and then also to build community and just to help out, make people more aware that this is a really big issue.
Yeah. And you'll just see that Kerry there has said she's a big fan.
I
And
love her.
yeah, and I'm a big fan as well. Like
Thank you.
genuinely a big fan of the way that you get the message across. How long have you been doing the Instagram page for? For me, you seem to have just been around forever, doing it forever. You seem like a very
Really?
permanent fixture. Yeah, like a very permanent fixture, at the
It's been,
center of the conversation. So,
it's been a while. Like I look back and I'm like, it's almost been 3 years now. Like it's
wow.
crazy. Like time goes by so quickly with it. Like, but it's been about I would say like I actually started my journey like behind the scenes around like December of 2018.
Right.
And then moving into 2019, like mid 2019 is when I really started. Like I think I shared a post like in the middle of the summer, and it was kind of quiet. It wasn't like full on like I do now. Like it was a little kind of, I was alluding to it. I wasn't fully on talking about it. But that first post, I got so much support that I'm like, I'm gonna continue to talk about this. And
Mm.
it just kind of snowballed from there. And like now I fully talk about it. Like I talk about the good, bad, and the ugly of being the adult child of an alcoholic. So,
Yeah, and I think you do it in a way that's compassionate, that has
right.
compassion, but it's quite I want to say the word firm, like in the way that you talk about stuff. We'll come on to some of the like advocacy work that you've done more recently that I think is really important as well. But I'd quite like to start by kind of diving into a little bit of your personal experience. So, you've set up this awareness stuff in terms of supporting children and people affected by a parent's drinking. Where did it all start for you? I mean, what's your story?
I grew up, my mother was an alcoholic. I don't really know where it started. It was going on before I was born. She was drinking while she was pregnant with me, unfortunately. Like I've heard that from family members. And from a young age, I remember my mother drinking. Like she never held a job. Like my father was always the one that was working. And she always struggled with it for my entire childhood. Like I remember from her early age, like going to the grocery store before school so she could get, her 30 pack of beer that she could drink during the day when we were at school. And when we, I remember like a distinct memory when I was like a little kid, like remembering like at the end of the day, like my stomach would just drop because I never knew what I was going to walk into at home, because my mother, she was a complicated person, but she was very, like, she was kind when she wasn't drinking, but like she was a totally different person. Like when she had alcohol in her system, she was very cruel, she was very verbally abusive. So in the evenings, it's like I would be dealing with fights between my parents, fights between the two of us. Like it was just a very uneven, chaotic household to grow up in. And, I got to age 18 and I did, I think, the typical thing that a lot of ACOAs do, where I was like, I'm fine. I survived. I have like my arms and my legs and I'm, nothing serious happened to me, so I'm fine. And it took me until my mid to late 20s to really realize that like it had a longer term effect on like my life. Like, I saw that I was a little bit different, but I feel like I didn't want to admit that I was different for the longest time. It took me until like, I think, you know, it really stood that I lost my mother when I was 24 due to complications from her addiction. And, that kind of started it. But even then, like, it kind of, I want to say it put the spark there because I did her eulogy and that was the first time that I actually actively talked about it. And, so many people are like, wow, like you have a really powerful way to talk about that. But life kind of got in the way and I didn't really get back into it until I was like 28 years old. And what had happened at that point is I really hit like a low point in my life. There was a lot of stuff going on. A lot of that codependency was catching up with me. And it's just, I wasn't living the life that I wanted to. And I felt like I needed to start from scratch. And I finally was like, I need to look at this stuff that I dealt with as a kid. And that's kind of where it started with me is like, I looked at that point in my late 20s, I was like, something needs to change. And I think it needs to start with like me dealing with all the stuff I went through as a kid. Like, even though
Mm,
it's not fun, I have to deal with it.
yeah. And what did dealing with it look like at that stage of your life? What did you get help? Did you get support? I don't know. Where did you go?
I did a little bit of therapy. I also, a lot of reading for me. Like I'm a big reader, so I did like the normal books, like the big red book, a lot of the codependency book, The Body Keeps Score, just trying to learn about where I came from. And at that point, I started to kind of get into the stuff that, we have, there's a link between like childhood trauma and the stuff that happens to you and like, getting into that stuff. And I started seeing that big picture and I'm like, wait a second, like this isn't just, my mother. It was like a smaller piece of a bigger puzzle. And that's really where things changed for me. And I was like, we need to kind of have a bigger conversation. Like, and for doing that, like doing the reading, figuring that out. And then like, I think we've talked about before, another thing for me is like getting outside. Like I'm very much like, I'm always in my head all of the time.
Mm,
And for me, getting outside, hiking, like doing like that natural type of medicine where it's like I'm getting outside and working with my body has really helped me a ton. Like it makes me realize like, I was very helpless in my childhood because it's like I was in an environment where I couldn't get out of it and I couldn't do anything about it. I was basically like a bystander. So when I go outside and I go hike like the 4,000 footers in New Hampshire, like I hike 20 miles, like a very hard terrain, like it shows me what I'm capable of. And that's very empowering for me to move forward.
mm. Do you think there's a presence that comes with that as well? Like when you're out hiking, you're just focusing on you, yourself, your
Yeah,
needs. You're present with who you are because
absolutely.
it sounds more like a simplistic kind of thing than what it is. I know, and I see that Carrie's mentioned that she does the same as well. But it's more than just going out for a walk, right?
Right.
It's the reconnection with your body.
Right, yeah, and it's like, like I said, it shows me what I'm capable of, which is like I definitely, like I was very helpless for a lot of years. It shows me what I'm capable of, but like you said, it reestablishes that mind-body connection that, I tend to be very much in my head all the time, like, and it takes a lot for me to slow down. But when I go outside and when I hike, like I have to be 100% present in that moment. And it's like that's the only time that I have when like I fully come down and calm down and my mind is quiet and I'm fully present. And it's something that's, has been very integral in my healing journey.
Yeah. And so to go back just for a moment when you were growing up, Was Do you remember any kind of signs that what you were experiencing was different as a child, or did it always seem normal? Did you just sort of float? Did you just sort of get through it? Was there, or did you have any moments that were big for you?
I really, honestly, I didn't really realize it until after my mother's death. Like I just kind of, like you said, I floated along for a while, and I was so focused on survival that I didn't really, I didn't really realize that, and I was so focused on that that I didn't really like realize. Like I feel like there was some sort of understanding, but it didn't come to like a really like deep level. I feel like the first real understanding that I had that it wasn't normal was when, like I said, during like when my mother passed away and during the funeral, when I openly mentioned that when she was an alcoholic, and people were like, "Wait, what?"
Mm,
And telling the stories and stuff, and like watching people's other reactions, and I'm like, this isn't normal. Like, and that's kind of where
mm,
I realized it was, and it's weird because it's like it wasn't till like my adulthood that I realized that we were different.
yeah, yeah. And somebody's relating, by the way, saying that they run marathons and triathlons for the same reason, right? And it's because they're always in their head, right? And
Yeah.
I think a lot of us can relate to that. And actually, when you look at our stories, it's quite shocking that you had to be stood up at a funeral and reading a eulogy to start to recognize that your experiences were different. I certainly remember in years gone by, I would tell people some of the things that happened when I was a child, and I would like see them be like, ah.
You're right.
And I'd be like, oh well, it wasn't that bad. Like, don't worry about it. I mean, it was normal. Like, there was no kids have it way worse than me and all that kind of stuff, right? And I think it's because I don't know. Would you say it's because we've become so conditioned to kind of just get on with life and push it under the carpet? It almost devalues our own experience.
Well, the whole thing that you just said about it's not that bad, like that's so like I didn't mean to laugh, but it's that's what I do too. Like you're
Yeah,
just like it's not that bad, and people are like, what?
yeah, yeah. Listen, everybody from doing these live interviews or every other time I speak to a COA, right? I've never met one who doesn't say to me, even now, I mean, I was really lucky and it wasn't that bad for me, right? Everybody
Right.
says that when they come on because I think it's part of the way that we find to survive, right? Is to almost,
Right, we're survivors, and that's how we got through it. And, we're not, I think that also has to do with the fact that, a lot of us as children, like just because, what was going on in our households, like we weren't given that same type of emotional support that like other children were given. So we're very used to like, putting, like minimizing what we've gone through
mm,
and being like it's not that bad, making yourself small and like kind of minimizing our experience. So like even when we're in an environment where we have people who are trying to be emotionally supportive of us, we're like, no, we're fine, like we're fine, like I'm good, because you're so used to that, not having that support or not having that emotional support reciprocated.
yeah, and that I really resonate with that. I really resonate even now sometimes with telling people my story. If they start going, "Oh, that must have been really," I get all like, "No, no, 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 it wasn't that bad. Don't worry about it. Everything's fine, right?"
It's
Because
really awkward. Like I definitely get like that too. Like I get awkward and I'm just like it's fine. Like I'm fine. Like it's not that big of a deal. Like people tell me I'm brave. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like I don't know. And it's
yeah,
just I
yeah.
think that you're just not like, and I know it. I know at a deep level I am, and I'm making change. But it's still like you're not used to having that recognition, and that can definitely be hard. Like, and you don't know how to reciprocate, or you don't know how to respond to that.
Yeah, yeah, no, definitely. Did you ever have any kind of relationship with your mum? I know, like, for example, for me, I'm someone who I don't remember really a positive relationship with my dad at all. I think it's more to do with not remembering it necessarily than it not existing. And I know some people have relationships where it's like on and off, and they get their amazing parents sometimes, and then they lose them when they. Did you have any kind of relationship with your mum?
I did. It was more the touch and go, and it was definitely like more. We never had like a really deep relationship just because it's like she was the type where it's like if I told her something really private, like it would come back, like it would come launching back at me when she was like drinking. So I was very like careful with what I told her because I wouldn't tell her anything like, like a really solid mother-daughter relationship. But we did have a pretty decent relationship for a little bit, especially towards, like my late 20 or my late teens, early 20s, like right before her death, and actually right before she passed away. And this has been really like a major stepping stone in my healing journey, that my mother actually right before she passed away, we were just like hanging out, we were sitting on the couch, and she just looks at me and says like, I'm sorry for everything. And it wasn't this like large like emotional apology, but like my mother was never really a really emotional person, but she looked right at me and said, I'm sorry. And I was like, I forgive you. Like, in, I think it was like a couple months before she, it was a couple months or a couple weeks before she passed away. And just to have that moment where it was like she acknowledged what she did and I was able to, forgive her for that, has been extremely healing for me. So,
Mm,
it's like I think one of the big things that bugs me about like the healing sphere, especially here on Instagram, is, hi Shannon, is that we have like this tendency of like going to one side or going to the other. It's very polarized. Like it's all their fault or it's not their fault. Like, and it's like I
mm,
think that especially with addicted parents, it's so much more complicated. And it's like, I can hold space for like the fact that my mother did some stuff like that she's responsible for, but at the same time, like I have to look at it through the lens of addiction, and it's like I balance both of those, and I try to show her compassion, but also hold responsibility for her actions, and I think that there's room for both of those.
yeah, and actually, I think society in general, in Western culture at least, is not very good at that. We're not very good
No,
at helping people to feel let down by somebody that they deeply love, right? We kind of
right,
we almost make it, if you feel let down by them, then you obviously don't love them that much, which is not true. Even with my dad, right? I talk about not really remembering having any of the good memories, but I do recognize from what I've been told that he was a good man who had his own struggles and all that kind of stuff. But you know, that doesn't take away from the pain that I experienced as a result of some of his actions, right?
right. Right. I think there's room for both of it, or both feelings. And I feel like a lot of people struggle with that. They either want to blame them or like forgive them totally. And it's like I think there needs to be more conversation, that there's a little space in the middle for that. Like, because
Mm,
it's definitely like, I think that we have a tendency of, you know, we have a tendency of like seeing like addiction as like a moral failure. And it's like, a lot of people, what's been bugging me lately is like a lot of people are, looking at our awesome, the way that we're starting to talk about things and the resources that we have, and, judging our parents based on like what's going on now. And it's like, but you have to look at like 30, 40 years ago, there weren't the same type of resources. It was a totally different culture. Nobody wanted to talk about it. And it's like, that's what they were used to. And I think that, a lot of people are judging the older generation based on what's going on now. And I think that I'm not absolving them of responsibility. They are responsible for their actions, and some of them should have done better, but I think that like sometimes we're a little bit too hard on them,
mm.
if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does make sense. Like, I sort of always say that that like bad people do exist, because I always want to
Right.
acknowledge that some people grew up with parents who were alcoholics, but also not very nice people, right? And so I know those children do exist, but I think often what we're talking about here is a wounded child disguised as an adult being a parent and parenting us, right? And
Right.
it's very easy to kind of hold our parents up on on some sort of platform where we think that they should just be able to do stuff, right? But they're just
Right.
like everybody else. They're human beings,
Right.
uh, and it's hard to acknowledge that sometimes, you know.
Right. Well, like you talk about the woundedness, and honestly, like I said, I don't, unfortunately, because of when my mother died and she wasn't really open about a lot of this stuff, I'm never going to know exactly where that started. But I just do know from watching her, she was an extremely wounded person, because like when she was drinking, it was just like angry, 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 and she wasn't like that. So it's like I feel like there was a lot of stuff that she was holding in, and she didn't know how to express it, and the way that she was trying to numb it out was through the alcohol, and then it was just this really nasty cycle that started. And part of me thinks that she just did not know what to do with it, and the way that she dealt with it was alcohol.
Yeah, That must have been a big moment when she looked at you and said, "I'm sorry."
Yeah, absolutely. Like it was life changing, honestly. Like, and it's the that like I tell people, it was the biggest gift that she ever gave me, was being like, I acknowledging, because I know not everybody gets that, like, and they have to, decide how to go forward without, like, I'm very lucky to have that closure, and I'm very thankful for it. And I take that gift, and I'm trying to help other people by telling my story, because I do have that closure. I have that ability to, like, get to a certain point, and that's kind of why I feel more comfortable telling my story, because
Yeah.
I don't have that open wound that a lot of people have.
Yeah. No, and listen, and I think that's a nice way of coming onto the platform that you've created. Actually, it's more than a platform. Let's call it what it is. It's a community, right? That you've created. Firstly, initially, I guess with your Instagram page. And by the way, the people that are in here watching, you can fire questions at us at any point, and I'll try and pick them up. I know I sometimes miss some of the conversations when I'm listening too deeply, but if people have questions, bring them up. How has your Instagram page evolved into a community? Did you make a plan? I'm going to set out and create a community here, or did you just start posting and then the next thing you know, there's a community?
No, honestly, I just started telling my story and didn't know really where it was going to go. And I kind of started adding things. And the community, the Takeover Thursdays, which we're actually doing today, after I got off with you, I actually was having like a rough day, and I was trying to just, like, I think I had a headache or something. And I tied it into my experience, and I just put the question box up, and I got an amazing reply from people about it. And I think it was talking about like physical symptoms. Like, I'll have to look back, but it was talking about, like, I somehow tied it into my experience as a child of an alcoholic, put the question box in there, and I got an awesome reply. So I'm like, maybe I can start doing this. Like, and I started doing it we started on Tuesdays, but then I switched it to Thursdays. And, it's become a really awesome place for children of alcoholics to, um, tell their story. But, like, I have, people will put a comment up, and then I'll have like three or four people message me about that answer. And um, they'll, like, be like, I didn't know that this was a thing. Like, and they kind of connect, like, they have that ability to share their story in a really honest way because it's anonymous. Like, I make sure everything's shared anonymously, so they have that openness.
Mm,
But then they love seeing the answers from the other COAs, and they're able to kind of connect with each other, which is really
wow.
cool.
So how exactly does it work? I don't think I knew about this. So on a Thursday, talk me through what you do. What happens on a Thursday?
So what I do, I put up basically, like, I'll put up a question related to, like, a children of alcoholic topic, like, what was your home like life? I think last week we did, or 2 weeks ago we did, like, growing up, like, for us, a lot of us weren't taught grooming. So I did a question about that. Like, I share my personal experience because I really believe in, like, leading from the front, like, putting my experience up there, so that kind of breaks the ice a little bit. And then afterwards, I'll put up, like, the question box. People answer. I reach back out to them and ask them if they're okay with me sharing that answer, and then I share that answer anonymously within my stories throughout Thursday and Friday.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really powerful because I know the importance of that anonymous space. I sort of had a similar journey with COA as a thing, right? When I
Yep.
started up the blog, that was literally, I'm just going to throw some stuff out there, and then people were writing to me and saying, I wish I could share my story, but I can't for X, Y, and Z reason.
Right.
Often, normally because their parents still here, for example. And I was like, well, I'll share it, and
Right.
I won't tell anyone who wrote it. And then
Right.
and what I've born out of that, and I guess this is what you found, is that there's a real yearning for that space. It's not that people won't speak about it; it's that they haven't been given that space.
Mm-hmm. Well, like, honestly, like, I don't want to say I'm thankful for my mother's death, because I'm not, but it has given me a space to be, like, my story is at a close now. So it's like, I am at a point where it's like I'm kind of, I don't have that live parent who's in addiction who's going to be hurt by that anymore. So it's like my story's at a close. So I'm at a point where I can be very open and tell my story and kind of be out here as, like, an advocate for the community. So it's like I try as much as I can to, create spaces, like anonymous spaces for, people like ACOA Thursdays. We also went with Impacted with Alcoholism, the other campaign that I started. I told people, I'm like, well, you can either, if you don't feel comfortable sharing your story, like if you don't want to show your face, like you can just do something, like if you want to put it on a card and like just send me like the picture, like there's a couple on my Instagram page, but like if you want to do that, I can post it anonymously so it's up there so you can kind of interact with the community. And giving people that anonymous space, because you're right, there's a lot of people who want to share their story but they're not in a space to do so, and just to see other people's stories really helps a lot of people, even if they are not at a point where they can tell their story.
Yeah, and that was the case for me when I started first reading stories. I just, I became sort of hooked on them. Just wanted to read more and more and more. It's like, just to like feel less and less alone each and every time I read one more and more. And I do think it's an important thing. And this is one of the things that your community does really well, right? And it's because you have that understanding of the importance of anonymity. And we'll come back to the impacted by alcoholism in a moment as well. So I want to talk a little bit more about that. But that anonymity is important because it's not even a level of sort of how healed or how well we are. It's often to do with life circumstances. And I always correct people when they say to me, I hope one day I can reach a space where you are and talk openly about it. And I say, it's nothing to do with the work that I've done necessarily. It's because of my life circumstances that allow me to do that. So I think that, and it's something that NACOA's sort of always understood, is that importance of NACOA. When did you come across NACOA?
I think early. I feel like it was really early in when I started like I feel like it was late 2019. I've been like hanging out with you guys for a while now.
Yeah, that's what I mean. That's why when you came on, I was like, how long have you been around? Because I just sort of always remember you being there. You're sort of like, I don't want to say part of the furniture. I don't know if that's like a very endearing kind of sentence, but it does feel, you feel very much part of the NACOA tribe, right? And,
well, you guys, the program in the UK is amazing. Like, it's not, the United States program does not have as much of like a social media presence. So, naturally, I think that, we deal with a lot of isolation. So it's like once I started telling my story, the other part of that was like, well, I wanted to find as many people who have been through this as possible. So like I was like looking for programs in the United States like with an online presence, and there's not a lot of them that are specific alcoholism based. Like there's a lot of different people that deal with this, but a lot of them are in Europe. Like there's not, like I think there's a couple individual accounts in the United States, but there isn't like and like you guys, like we have them, but they're not online as much. Like they don't have an Instagram presence as much as you guys do. So I definitely like gravitated towards you because you guys just were like you have an amazing online presence to help people.
No, listen, that's been built over a few years now. I just want to very quickly just pick up something that Charlie said here. Her siblings would have an issue with her sharing, so for them she doesn't. Again, that's just really highlighting what we were talking about, right? And it's important.
Right.
And then Piers has also highlighted, we brought together champions of children of alcoholics from all over the world yesterday. There was a guy called Jerry whose surname escapes me, but he's from America.
Really?
And he does lots of really good work with children over there. So
I'm gonna have to check that out because I was so bummed out because like I work from 9 to 3, so I wasn't able to catch that. I only caught like 5 minutes of it yesterday, but I have to go back and look at it. But I'm gonna go find that after we're done.
Yeah, Jerry Moe is his name, as Piers has just said. Yeah, so go and check the live out. Yeah, go and check the live out yesterday because Jerry Moe, an amazing guy, absolutely incredible guy as well with what he was doing. I think he had everyone sort of buzzing when we were watching it.
Right. I'm definitely gonna check that out.
Yeah, because look, I feel like there's so much that you could do, particularly with what you've already achieved, in some of the work that you do. So tell me about the Impacted by Alcoholism. I know you've already talked a little bit about it. Did that come about almost accidentally again, and or was it how did it come? I think it's one of the best campaigns ever online.
Thank you.
I'm going to go with that. Yeah, I can't think of anything better, so I'm going to say that. Yeah.
So we can't talk about Impacted by Alcoholism without talking about Tropicana, because
good.
So I think it was December the everything's like just with COVID and everything is just it's been crazy.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
so I think it was right before Christmas. Tropicana launched this campaign called Take 'em a Moment, where they basically ran this ad campaign where they were saying, "Oh, parenting is hard because of the pandemic, but we can help you out." And they had people going into their closets, locking the door, and then opening a mini fridge with like mimosa ingredients in it, which, coming from the background that I did kind of made me really angry because, my mother used to try to hide her drinking, and it was just like, we always knew it. Like, you can't hide drinking from kids. They're very intuitive. They know what's going on. And it was just the message that Tropicana was propagating was it's like, oh, if you can't handle your kids, go into your closet and, drink. And it's just like, come on, like, really? Are you kidding me? And that really, a lot of us, like the sober community came out and was, advocating against that. Like I put it out to my community because it was just like, this is really hurtful. Like, it's not funny. It's not just a joke. Like, this is behavior that literally hurts kids. And especially right now when a lot of kids are in lockdown, they're not in school, they're dealing with alcoholic parents all the time. And it's just like, it isn't a joke. And this ad needs to come down. And through some advocacy, through Facebook, through Instagram, we were fine. Tropicana took the ad down and apologized. But that got me thinking because, unfortunately, when they took that ad down, there was a lot of backlash, especially here in the United States, where people are like, "Oh, you guys are it's cancel culture. You guys can't take a joke, blah, 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 blah." Like, and for me, at first, I was kind of like, I don't, like, I was hurt by that. And I was like, I don't understand why these people cannot see, like, how prevalent this is. And that kind of, like, was a light bulb moment for me because people don't see it, because we don't talk about it. There's a lot of stigma around it. And, I got to a point where I was like, and after that, I was thinking, like, how do we make them see that there's actually people and there's kids behind this? And I kind of was thinking about it for a little bit, and I'm like, I think I'm gonna start like, I wrote it on a piece of paper, like, and I remember being mad about it because I had a pen, I didn't have like an actual marker to put it, like, to do my little sign with. But I was like, for some reason, I felt like that was the moment that I needed to do that. So I put the impact, my life has been impacted by alcoholism. I posted the picture, and I let people know they could either do it like on their page, or they could do it anonymously through me. But the reason that I did that was I wanted people to see us like in a meaningful way, because they don't, and I think that definitely needs to change. And
Yeah.
it definitely, like, it snowballed and became like it's still going on. Like, people are still sending me pictures and stuff. It's like, I definitely want to do more work with that because I think it's been amazing.
Mm. Yeah, and what I loved about the campaign is I think with any successful campaign, like if you can keep it simple so that it's very like reachable and accessible for everybody to do, uh, but still holds the power. And the fact that you did it with the biro and that, because you didn't have a marker pen, I think it gives it more weight, right? It's one of them things
Yeah.
where it didn't feel like this big sort of like big funded campaigns that you see, yeah? It just
Right.
looked like somebody that had been impacted by alcoholism that was willing to stand up and say, here's the deal. Piers is saying, I have a meeting with Oatly next week to talk about their similar campaign. Have you seen the Oatly campaign?
I have seen it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not okay. If you
Uh,
need any help with that, like, I would love to help, Pierce, because it's just not acceptable. Like, it's the same. There's been this weird thing going on during the pandemic where it's like companies that are not alcohol companies are gearing their stuff towards, like, they're using marketing towards, like, they're marketing alcohol even though they're not marketing alcohol, and it's like it's strange. Like, I don't know how to, like, there was another one in the United States, like, can't remember the brand, but it was a coconut water that was talking about, like, National Hangover Day, New Year's Day, and like the language that they were using was just like it was very like hot button towards alcoholism, and it's just like you why like and for me that bugs me because I expect that type of stuff out of like a alcohol company, but like a coconut water company, an oat milk company, a orange juice. It's like, what is going on right now that you guys
Mm,
are doing this?
mm. I think a lot of it is a reflection of the normalization of addiction.
Right.
I remember a campaign by Talk Talk a while back in the UK, and it was much more subtle. But they had a picture of a woman with a child on her lap, and she was looking at a mobile phone,
Yeah.
and it said something about binge watching something. Nobody picked up on that one, but
Yeah.
the way in which the picture was taken, it was clearly like for me, it was clearly kind of the similar sort of thing. Piers did ask, what is there anything you can think of that you specifically said to Tropicana that actually was the golden bullet, so to speak, that got through to them and made them readdress the situation?
Um, I'm trying to think. I don't know. I really shared my story. I told them, the way that I put my comment up and the way that, I presented myself is I'm like, I watched this as a child. Like I watched my mother drink and I watched my mother hide her drink and kids know. Like this whole idea that kids don't know, it's stupid and it's hurtful not only to basically the way that I said it is I was like, not only is it hurtful to the sober community that's working really hard on their sobriety right now, especially during lockdown, but it's hurtful to the children and adults that have seen this close at hand.
Yeah. Uh, let's read a couple of these comments just quickly so we don't run away. Amanda said, love that Piers has got a meeting with Oatley. Let's stop normalizing alcohol, get more creative with birthday cards. Honestly, Mother's Day isn't all about gin o'clock. It's so uncreative. ACOA Shu says the US thought process is as long as you don't drink and drive, drinking is okay. It's not. Society doesn't look at kids and the ancillary effects of drinking. uh, Toby, who we did a live with yesterday, said that children tend to just be collateral damage.
Yep.
And it's very true here, by the way, in the UK. We're the same. As long as you hold down a job and pay your bills, you can drink as much as you want when you want, as long as you don't drink and drive. It's so true.
That's how it
Uh,
is here too.
yeah. Jess says, I think it's a lack of awareness as well. I complained to Oatley about the bin one, and they tried to say it was on climate change, which is interesting. Somebody's talked about a good way to build empathy as well. I'm not sure what point they're on there, but I do think is it similar where you are that it's just so normalized? A different,
Oh yeah.
having quite a toxic relationship with alcohol is relatively normal here, and actually, it's still seen in our society as being weird if you don't drink.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like I'll go to a wedding and like I've had a couple instances where it's like I'll go to a wedding and someone's like obviously pre-COVID, but why aren't you drinking? Like I've had incidents where people have like gotten in my face and I've had to be like fine, like I've gone through a couple of polite replies and then I look right at them like if they don't stop and I'm like my mother died of alcoholism. And they're like, "Well, why did they get all awkward?" And it's like, "Well, I tried to tell you in a
Mm,
polite manner that, I don't drink. Like I didn't, I was like, I don't drink, thanks. I'm all set. Like, and you try to go through that polite step and they keep for some reason pushing and it's like, why? Like over here it's definitely the same thing. It's like if you're like a functioning alcoholic, you're fine. You don't get a lot of attention. It's only when, the only time that we think that it's bad is, when it's like non-functioning alcoholism. But the weird thing is we don't want to talk about that. Like, and we're definitely a very alcohol heavy society where it's like, the kids going to college are drinking like heavily. You go to a wedding, everybody's like, just totally intoxicated and it's seen as something funny and joking and we have a culture that definitely does a lot of that and it's very normalized until it's not normalized and I feel like we definitely set a lot of people up for falling into that type of addiction, but once they fall into that addiction we don't want to talk about it anymore and it's hush hush, like stigmatized. Like that's how it was with me growing up. Nobody wanted to talk about, like I thought it was the secret growing up. Like my mother was an alcoholic and everybody knew but nobody wanted to talk about it. And
mm,
that's definitely where we're at with things is it's like, we definitely have a very alcohol heavy society. But, you know, when someone has a problem, we don't want to talk about it. We don't want to help them. It's seen as like a moral, I think we've talked about this, but we've seen it like as a moral failure. And it's like, but how can it be? I think there's definitely a certain level of choice there. But at the same time, if we have a society that's very alcohol heavy and we're setting people up for this, like a certain amount of people are going to stumble into that.
Mm. Have you ever drank?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So
I'm very careful with it though. Like I definitely am one of those people, like for a while I didn't drink. I drank a little bit in my early 20s and like I'll have a beer once every 3 to 6 months type of thing. Like I definitely, but I've gone years without drinking too. So I'm definitely
mm,
very careful with it though from where I came from. Like it's just I know I'm at a higher risk for alcoholism given my background, like with the trauma and also the fact that my mom drank while she was pregnant with me. So
mm.
but I definitely I make sure that it's not something integral into my life.
Yeah, yeah, it doesn't become like your crutch. ACOA Shoe says, if you tell someone you don't drink, they relate that comment as you must have had a problem with drinking in the past. They don't understand not drinking because you lived through alcoholism as kids, and then
Right.
somebody's agreed with that. Yeah, you think that's true as well?
Yeah, it's either you're pregnant or you're an alcoholic here in the States.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
that's yeah.
that's
I only get the latter. I don't get the first one. Otherwise, I'd use it as an excuse. I'd imagine I can probably get away with it sometimes as
yeah.
well. But
Yeah, and
no,
it's
it's true. Yeah.
but it's just like, oh, you must have a problem and it's like, no, I just don't want to drink. Like and I don't and I've actually had conversations with people about that and they're like, I don't understand why we can't just say like anything else like you know, you're faced with anything else and you say no to it and people are just like okay and they accept it. Alcohol is the only thing that like you get a ton of pushback on for some reason.
Yeah, yeah. It's the only drug I have to explain not doing. If I tell it,
Right.
I always say if I tell anyone else that I don't do heroin, they don't start going, well, why is that then? Like, surely you can just have one bit of heroin. They don't do that. But with alcohol, it's like, you know,
Have you seen the video? I'll have to send it to you. One of my friends, Highlight Real Recovery, she did a video and she switched, you know, like all the mom wine culture stuff. She basically switched the word alcohol or wine with the word crack
yeah,
and like said that and it's like it's true like and if you look at it like oh mommy just needs some crack mommy and it's like she did a really good video. I'll send it to you but it was like put that you know the way that we look at alcoholism and put another drug in there and it sounds really offensive but like with alcohol it's so normalized it's mind blowing.
yeah. And listen, I believe the ones that get upset with us when we say we don't want to have a drink, the ones that won't let it go, are having a mirror held up to them. So
Absolutely.
my ability to say no to alcohol is making them feel exposed about their inability and their own difficult relationship with alcohol. And that's why, listen, I used to go to the bar with like my 4 kids, and I would stay in there all day and leave blackout drunk at the end of the day, and no one said a word to me. I can go
Yeah.
in the same place now without my kids and order a Coke, and everyone wants to talk about it. And that's a reflection of the society that we live in. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Like you should have seen, like I posted on during the Tropicana thing, I posted a tweet that said basically the Tropicana thing is what's wrong with you know, alcoholism in America. I forget how I said it, but I basically was like the Tropicana campaign is the prime example of like what's wrong with the alcohol in the United States. And the
Yeah,
responses that I got from people were just like off the wall. Like people like just saying the rudest things I have ever heard in my life to me. And I'm like, you would have thought that I like insulted their grandmother. Like it was
mm,
crazy. Like, and I definitely, like, you're right. It's at first, it kind of like that inner wounding with me. At first, like, I got really upset about it, but I was able to kind of step back and be like, it isn't what I'm saying. It's a reflection of how they're feeling. Like, it's them, it's
yeah,
not me.
yeah. That's so true. Foxtel has said it would be nice to see all addictions addressed in primary school systems. Children need to understand at a young age what is going on. It might
Right.
also help prevent sexual abuse. Yeah, I think that's true. I think we get to people way too late to have these conversations. I don't know. What's your
Right.
thoughts on that?
I absolutely think that that's 100% right. I think that, you know, we don't, you know, a lot of times. like I know in my case, like I didn't find a lot of this, like I had to go looking for this information in my like mid to late 20s to find out about it. You know,
Mm.
they don't teach it in schools. When I was in school, they had the DARE program, which was the Say No to Drugs, and basically it was very like, you know, drugs are bad, you know, and it's like I understand where they were coming from, but at the same time, you know, for someone that was living with an alcoholic, it's like to say everybody that, you know, does drugs is bad. It's like I'm looking at my mother, like, is my mother bad? Like,
Yeah.
and I just don't think that that's a very trauma informed way to approach it. I think that we need to approach it like less as a moral failure and more as a less as a moral failure and more as a, you know, stuff happens. Like it's very societal. There's a lot of different things going on.
Yeah.
And I think that we do, he's right, or they're right. We need to approach it like at a younger age. And I think it needs to be age appropriate. I think what freaks people out is that they think that you're going to go into a school and like show like 5-year-olds how to like, you know, shoot heroin into their arm. And it's like, no, that's not what we're
Yeah.
doing. Like, but you need to like let them know like, you know, this is what this looks like, and you know, if someone might be, you know, so they have that information. You know, that would have been such a game changer for me to be like, some parents drink too much. If I had known that at 5 years old, like that would have been like I would have felt so much less isolated than I did. Like, and I think
Mm.
that we need to come up with programming to help those kids get that education earlier, not only on like the addiction, but also like on the trauma aspects, so that they, you know, they know that they're not alone, that other kids go through this, there's resources, and they're not alone.
And that they can, so that they can comprehend their experience, you know, like if somebody has said some parents drink too much, you're giving the 5-year-old me an opportunity to comprehend what I'm experiencing. If you
Right. And
avoid that issue, then I can't comprehend what I experience because nobody's helping me comprehend it.
right. I think also, you know, you have a tendency of seeing like, you know, we're either ignoring it or we're coming like, you know, we find that, you know, someone has a problem in our class and we think that this is what's going on and we pull the kid out in the hallway and we're like, what's going on at home? Well, you have like a child that's dealt with like a traumatic, like a dysfunctional family, and they know not to talk. Like it's just, even if they haven't been told not to talk to an adult, like they just feel this inherent need to like protect their family. Like it's just part of
Mm.
us, I feel like.
Yeah.
And, you know, you know, that full frontal assault on like a kid being like, you know, what's going on at home, they're not going to tell you. They just aren't like, and I think that we need to like you said, like tell them what's going on, give them the information and kind of let them sit with it for a little bit. And then also be like, I'm here if you need me.
Mm.
And, you know, it might take a little bit for that kid to come to you and to be like, there's something going on at home. They might not even come to you, but at least if you have that information out there, they know that they're not alone, and they know that there's like, just knowing that there's a supportive adult in your life is such a game changer.
Yeah. And look, it's a big enough problem for us to actually do a blanket approach here and actually start to educate all children on on the difficulties that they might experience at home, right? I know in the UK, once upon a time, we used to do things like stranger danger, and it was all kind
Yep.
of a waste of time because, you know, if you're going to be abused in some way, it's likely to be by somebody actually that's close to you and that you know. So we were all right doing it when it was like, watch out for those strangers, but now we have this kind of complex difficulty in reaching those children, and the children that need reaching, like you've just said, to kind of mirror back what you've said, it's the ultimate act of betrayal for these kids to tell you what's going on. And so
Right.
if you think that you can't help them unless they tell you exactly what's going on, you're never going to be able to help them, right? I'm
Right.
33. My dad died when I was 9 years old, and I still feel like I'm betraying him just by showing up on this interview sometimes if I'm not in the right headspace. So we have to be much more aware of that, and I hope that we can. I just want to read some of these comments that are coming in so I can catch up. Alex Walker has said, been looking forward to this one. Love this lady. Lucy said, the encouragement I've seen everywhere to drink to get through homeschooling is just horrendous. ACOA shoe.
Can I make a comment on that real quick?
Of course you can, yeah.
Just so you know, if you want to reach out to me, I have a whole bunch of resources on sober moms and support systems within the United States and the UK for so like people who don't want to drink and need a little bit extra support. We do have resources for that. So.
Amazing. Oh, that's incredible. I've just pressed something here. Oh, there we go. ACOA shoe. Always knew I would not drink when I settled down and had kids. Um,
I thought that as well. Unfortunately, it didn't work out for me in the same way, but I got there in the end.
I think
Uh,
it's definitely very individualized for
yeah,
everybody.
yeah. I think it has a lot to do with the family roles and stuff like that, which we probably haven't got time to go into today. Amanda said the encouragement I've witnessed in certain private sectors to drink to be a winner is horrendous too. Yeah, the way that we do that. JB Prime Cuts has said we 100% need to start early with kids. I think that's really important. Yeah. Cheryl, I've told my kids what happened with my mum, why she died, how my house was, and that they have to be careful with alcohol. They understand completely. Would you agree with that? Do you have kids? I thought I asked
Nope,
you.
not yet.
No. Yeah, I mean, let's pretend that you did. Do you think it's something that you would be open with them about as quickly as you could? I don't know.
Um, I mean, definitely age appropriate. Like I wouldn't go into like my story is very like chaotic and there's a lot of really bad things in there. So I don't think like with I wouldn't start that really early, but I mean, I definitely would like let them know like their grandmother is going to be part of their lives. Like, but it's definitely, I'm going to tell her or tell them about who she was, what she struggled with. Like, I definitely, it's going to be part of it because it's part of their history, it's part of their genetics. Like,
Mm,
they are at a higher risk for it, and I want to educate them. It's definitely going to be, like I said, my story is very complex and there's parts of it that are very traumatic, so I wouldn't like tell them that part of it till they're older, but I definitely would give them some sort of understanding about it, like probably from an earlier age.
yeah, I've certainly always done it with my children. I don't go in and say to them that my dad was this angry, violent, chaotic man, but I let them know that, he had an issue with the way in which he used alcohol and it caused him a problem, and I think there's
Yeah,
definite ways.
to tell
Uh,
them.
yeah, coastal recovery. Yes, the don't talk, don't trust, don't feel is creating another traumatized generation. There's no doubt about that. Lucy, children need to be taught how to feel their feelings, not cover them up with alcohol. I couldn't agree more with that.
Me
Lisa, my
too.
dad was 33 years in AA since I was 21. I'm now 56, still affected. I appreciate your campaign. I don't drink too, and people wonder about me. I am so grateful for your honesty, and I'm in Alanon. Have you ever
Nice.
used any support groups of any kind?
I do more of the reading, honestly. The Alanon, I kind of struggle with it a little bit just because some of the language is very religion based.
Mm,
And I mean, I think the way that I look at it is I think it's awesome for a lot of other people. I never could connect with it in a meaningful way. I have other resources that I connect with. And like I said, getting out in nature, reading, connecting on this platform with other ACOAs. The Alanon, it doesn't fit well with me, but I think that it's a good resource.
and that's yeah, and I think that's a great way to talk about it. We all have our different ways, and books has been one of the most important things for me. I know that. You guys should be running the world. You don't want me running the world. I mean, listen. I think Colleen would do a good job, but you don't want me running the world. You think it's bad now?
I don't know,
Uh,
it could get worse. I mean, we kind of
Listen, yeah, listen. I might be able to talk nicely about children of alcoholics, but if you left me in charge of running the world, I don't know where I'd go with that. Look, we're running a little bit short of time. There's a question that I always want to ask people before we kind of wrap this up, and that is, what would you say to if you could go back now and speak to the 12-year-old you in this situation and circumstances that she found herself in? What would you say?
it gets better. It gets so much better than what you're dealing with right now. I know that it's hard. I know that you're dealing with a lot. I know that it's really hard, but you're incredibly strong and you are going to get through this. And it just goes up from here.
Yeah, incredible. I love that, and I love the simplicity of it gets better. And you know what? I think the reason the COA we've been able to kind of grow in the way that we have is because we understand that actually this isn't about finding like massive fixes.
Right,
This is about reaching people where they're at, letting them
right.
know that they're not alone, that it does get better.
Right, just knowing, like, honestly, your organization does an incredible job of that. Like, I feel like we have, this preoccupation with trying to fix people. And
Mm,
I think that, just like you said, meeting people where they're at and being like, I understand and I'm here if you want to go forward or if you want to stay where you're at. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I think that it's really important to meet people where they're at and understand that, just to listen just makes people feel so much less isolated.
Incredible. Listen, there's loads of stuff, loads of comments coming in now. Much love. This has been such an important discussion. I've spent the entire live nodding. Yeah, thanks for this during COA week. You're both inspirational.
Thank
Coastal
you.
Recovery has shared adultchildren.org. That's a great program that some people find useful as well. They're so glad they caught this from the USA. Lisa, thank you so much. Listen, so from me, I'm hugely grateful to you, Colleen. I think, I don't know, I've always kind of said this to you in the times that we have spoke. You have an absolute way of reaching people in a way that other people may not be able to do. And I think it's really important. And you know, I always like to kind of highlight that you're always speaking from your own personal experience as well. And I know personally, that's not always easy, you know, and there's a certain amount of, I'm going to use the word stuff, that you will go, that I know you probably have to go through in order to be able to show up in this way, right? I don't want to make people think that it's this horrible thing that we go through to do this, but I just want to really kind of highlight my gratitude that you go through that in order to kind of use your experience in a way that you do. So I'm certainly grateful, and I know a lot of other people are as well.
Thank you. Yeah, it's definitely, you know, some days it's challenging, but to be able to like use my experience to help other people is like really rewarding. To be able to make people, like, my main mission is to make people feel like they're less alone. And if I have to go through some discomfort to do that, then I will, because, you know, I want to change things. The way that things currently are, it's not acceptable. And if I can help change that, then I'm willing to do what I need to do that.
Yeah. Brilliant, Colleen. I think that's a lovely way to kind of wrap this up. I want to say again, I'm really grateful. We're going to have to do more stuff with you because
absolutely.
you know, I think you've been part of the tribe for a while now. But I've been telling everyone that do these lives that this has been like an initiation. That's it. You won't get out of our grasps now. You're part of the tribe. So thank you. Kerry's just coming in saying how exhausting it can be to do some of the work that we do, but so worth it, and that you're a star.
Thank you.
And I agree with her.
Yeah, thank you everybody for like the awesome comments. So, you know, I couldn't do what I do without all of your support. So thank you guys all so much. Like, I appreciate every single one of you.
Yeah. Okay, good. I'm going to read one more comment from Miss Laura Lou, who says, I need to rewatch this as it went odd, so I will rewatch. Okay, maybe she lost her signal. It'll go on our grid. This will be on the ACOA space, and then it goes on YouTube as well eventually. So for anybody that wants to catch it there, they can. I'm going to say much love, Colleen, and thank you very much. And
thank you, guys.
I'm sure we'll speak soon. All right.
Thank you, Josh.
All right. Take care, everyone.
All right. Bye.
Bye.